It's week 17 and it's championship time for most of you. Let's get it right. Let's go through each and every matchup of the week and talk about wide receivers. Well, there are a few guys you don't have to think about. These are the must starts. CeeDee Lamb, AJ Brown, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Tyreek Hill, Mike Evans, Justin Jefferson, Michael Pittman, if he plays, and Jamar Chase, if he plays. First, let me remind you that it's still a good time to check Underdog Fantasy and try it out if you haven't yet. If you sign up now and use promo code ENDGAME, you get this week's free new customer special. It's Dak Prescott just going over 1 yard on Saturday. That's right, go higher than 0.5 total yards. It's a free pick. He gets a yard, you get a win. Just combine it with any other pick, and you already get your deposit match doubled 100% dollar for dollar up to $100. Try it out now. Just make sure you use promo code ENDGAME when you sign up. We got one more Thursday game this season. It's going to be the Jets taking on the Browns. Well, let's start with Garrett Wilson. Tough assignment here. How does that make you feel about Wilson?
Yeah, feel about the same. We know he's going to get the targets. He's got a decent floor, so I think he's a solid start this week.
And at Cleveland, it's good defense, and it's not like he exactly went off even against the Commanders last week. I know sometimes we chase the upside and we say he could. Man, it's championship week. I would say I feel like Wilson is just a risky streamer. Now, the other side, the number one guy there is Amari Cooper. If you have Amari Cooper and you played him last week, which hopefully you did, congrats, you won. Is Amari Cooper going to come close to what he did last week now against the Jets?
Probably not. I mean, this is Sauce Gardner, this is the Jets, but could you really sit Amari Cooper after what he did last week? I think you got to put him in your lineup and take what he gets you, but I do worry about a letdown this week.
If there's any player due for a letdown, it's him, and not just because there's no possible way to do what he did again, but now he goes against one of the toughest defenses, one of the toughest corners, but yeah, you pretty much just have to start Amari Cooper anyways. On Saturday, we got that Lions-Cowboys game. So the Sun God is still a stud. You have to start him. Do you have to start Jameson Williams?
One of these guys you're just hoping for like a long play, a touchdown in your championship week? No, not starting him.
Exactly. Like, I don't even remember if I've said yes to him at all this season. This week, there's no chance I would say yes. Might say yes to Brandon Cooks. He found the end zone again last week at home. This Lions defense hasn't been as good in the secondary.
Yeah, Dallas back at home against the Lions. If you're looking for kind of a desperation upside play, he can do it.
Agree. He's an upside flex option. I know Dallas hasn't been as good on offense, but they're back at home, and that seems to really matter to them. The Dolphins are going to take on the Ravens this week, and normally we talk about Jalen Waddle, but a high ankle sprain could keep him out the rest of the regular season. So a big blow, not just for the Fins, but for fantasy owners who have been using him. So now, do we take a look at Cedric Wilson?
I'd have to be very desperate to put Cedric Wilson in my lineup. Like, this would have to be like a deep dynasty league where I don't have better options. That's it.
Exactly. Maybe if this was a different matchup, I might entertain it. But on the road against the Ravens, yeah, sorry. I think I'm just going to have to pass. Now for Baltimore, let's talk about their receiver group. Zay Flowers, still their number one guy. How do you feel about him here?
Don't feel great about him against this Dolphins defense, but he is the number one guy. He at least has a decent floor. So I think if you need him, you can start him this week.
Right. This is a player who is always kind of on the bubble of being startable or not. We don't really know if they're going to go to him a lot. I think he's in a decent spot this week, but again, this really comes down to who else you got. And what about Odell Beckham? Is there enough upside here?
Yeah, this is like desperation home run play, but not one I feel as good about like Brandon Cooks, so not doing it.
Agree. Like every time I'm ready to be back in on OBJ, he just lets me down. I can't do it in championship week. Patriots at the Bills. There's one Patriot receiver you feel like is playable. It's Demario Douglas. He actually came through with a nice game last week. But what about on the road against Buffalo?
He's fine, but that's all he ever is for me. He's fine. So if you just need a floor play, go for it.
In a full PPR league, I think it would have to be a full PPR league, he'll get you a floor. If he scores a touchdown, he'll get you a nice game like last week. Otherwise, you might be left wanting. So we'll just say if your other options are really unappealing, you could go Douglas. And now we legitimately have to ask, can we play Stephon Diggs in Week 17? This is 4 games in a row of subpar performance, and it's not even like he's nursing an injury or they're not throwing it his way. He just isn't producing.
I will say, one thing I do like about two things I like about Stephon Diggs this week. Number one, they're at home, and number two, the Patriots play the most man defense of anybody in the NFL, by far the most man defense. He typically tears up man defense, but I get it if you want to sit him, but I still think he's a solid start this week.
I'm super nervous. If I have Diggs anywhere in my championship, I'm definitely worried he's going to let down again. A lot of people who were hoping for a big game from Diggs last week, especially against the Chargers, are already let down. I would only sit him if I definitely have superior receivers on my bench that I could substitute for him. And then there's Gabe Davis, went from agent 0 to agent, I didn't start him, but he went off on my bench as he does. What's it going to be this week?
Against the Patriots, I'm not doing it. You want to do it? You want to chase that home run? Risk a strikeout? Go ahead, but I'm not.
Yeah, this is not the type of player you want to take a chance on in the finals. Now, if he had a big game last week, that means he'll probably do nothing this week. So just bench him. Falcons going to take on the Bears. So let's start with Drake London. Didn't have a big game with Taylor Heineke. It doesn't seem to be a connection that really clicks. Are you worried about him in Week 17?
You got to be. This Bears secondary is pretty good. Now they're on the road, which isn't good. I'm not starting Drake London this week.
Yeah, not only because he let me down last week, but again, he's far worse on the road than at home. Jalen Johnson for the Bears has been one of the top corners in the league. That defense, especially in the secondary, has been much improved. Yeah, I'm just sitting Drake London everywhere. You'd like to just say you have to start DJ Moore, but he left early with an injury. He did come back and play, but clearly wasn't right. He was just basically a decoy in this game. Got to wonder if he plays, and if so, is he going to be right?
Yeah, you got to be very nervous here. First of all, Atlanta, a very good defense, good secondary, dealing with an ankle injury. I would have a hard time playing, unless somehow he's like practicing fully all week and the coaching staff is like, no, he's fine, no ankle issue at all. I would have a hard time starting him this week, which is really unfortunate because he's been so good this year.
Moore is one of those players that for me, if he's playing and there's, no limitations or anything and, not a game time decision to say, yeah, he's good, he's going to play, I have a hard time sitting him. But I will say I don't expect a big game even if he does play. Next, we got a rematch of the Titans at the Texans. These teams just met a couple weeks ago. Let's talk DeAndre Hopkins. Well, Ryan Tannehill was back at quarterback, and it meant absolutely nothing for Hopkins. He did very little. Can he do something in this game?
On the road against the Texans, no, I'm not feeling DeAndre Hopkins this week. I'm not starting him.
Yeah, he's starting to feel a little Gabe Davis-esque to me. It's just kind of boom or bust. I don't want to risk the bust. I'm going to say no. Now, on the other hand, Nico Collins came back. Not a huge game, but he did score. And hopefully CJ Stroud is back. So in this matchup, can you trust Nico Collins?
Yeah, I think you got to trust Nico Collins at home against the Titans. Hopefully CJ Stroud back. I think Nico Collins is a good start.
Yeah, like you said, he's back at home. He's much better at home. The Texans are better at home. CJ Stroud, Nico Collins is going to be better with him. And I would think there's no performance dip because he's more fully recovered from that calf injury. So I'll say if I have Nico Collins, I'm definitely going to want to start him. And I'm also going to say I feel like he could be in store for a big game like he was doing throughout the early portion of the season. This is a guy who was averaging 90 yards a game before that injury. So if you look right now on Underdog, as I mentioned earlier with those pick'ems, he has a line of higher than 69.5 yards that I'm going to take. I'm going higher. I think he'll go back to his previous level of performance. You're new to Underdog and you already get that free pick of Dak Prescott getting 1 yard on Saturday. You can pair it with this pick or any other pick you like, and that's a great chance to win your very first pick'em. Let's also talk about Noah Brown. He's going to be a factor, but is he going to be enough of a factor for fantasy owners?
They're at home. It's the Titans. CJ Stroud should be back. I think Noah Brown is still a guy that you can feel okay about if you need him.
Yeah, he's somebody you look at last week and you'll say, he didn't do anything. You can't look at last week. That was with a backup quarterback. They're back at home. Much better matchup. I think he's a decent flex with a lot of upside. Raiders and Colts. Well, talk about one of the big letdowns of Week 16. It was Devontae Adams and really that whole Raiders passing game. This is just a roller coaster with this team, isn't it? What do we even do with Adams?
I don't know. I mean, it's a good matchup. The Colts, not good against number one wide receivers. But the issue here is that head coach Antonio Pierce just wants to run the football and doesn't want Aiden O'Connell to throw it, which makes a lot of sense. So I think they're going to throw it more than they did last week. It's a good matchup, but I'm just going to say Adams only like a solid start this week.
Yeah, going to agree that, the defensive matchup is just much better for sure. You got to be nervous. So what is the ceiling here with Adams? So, yeah, I think he's still a good start because there's not a lot of receivers you really feel better about than Devontae Adams. And then I have to ask about Jacoby Myers. Look, technically, he did lead this team in receiving in Week 16.
Yeah, but I can barely start Adams. You think I'm starting Jacoby Myers? No chance.
I didn't think so. Probably not. Maybe if you're in a standard league and it's really deep and you need a flex, but that's about it. Now we know if Michael Pittman comes back, you're starting him. If he doesn't, are we going to pivot to Josh Downs?
Why? I mean, he didn't come through last week without Michael Pittman, and the Raiders' defense has been actually pretty good this year. I'm not starting Josh Downs.
We kind of half joked, like, well, if Pittman's out, is it going to be Downs? I said, no, it's probably just going to be that they're going to spread the ball out to like 5 different tight ends. That's pretty much what they did. Yeah, Downs, for some reason, just hasn't been getting enough targets, not doing anything. You can't start him. Panthers at the Jaguars. Adam Thielen, maybe a little bit of a renaissance this week. Got some yardage, and I think more importantly, Bryce Young has made some improvements. Do we have to be back in on Thielen?
I don't. I mean, he had a decent game. He gave you a floor. But, man, the Packers' defense just imploded. I know the Jaguars' defense has been bad, but I don't know if I'm banking on the Panthers doing this 2 weeks in a row. I'm not starting Adam Thielen.
Yeah, I still think we have to acknowledge that there's not much of a ceiling here. Still not a lot of touchdown upside. This isn't early season Thielen, so he's just kind of a desperation floor play. But I'll also tell you this, I am more in on DJ Chark, not just because, he happened to score twice last week, but he got a lot more targets. He's a guy who has more big play ability. And going against the Jaguars, I don't know, I think he has more upside. At least I feel like he's streamable.
Yeah, I at least feel like DJ Chark has upside. He's kind of like there with Brandon Cooks for me, but not as good as Brandon Cooks because he's not on the Cowboys. But he's one of these guys in a good matchup, could hit a home run. So if you need that, go for it.
And then Calvin Ridley finally did come through when, they had no other option here. But what if Trevor Lawrence doesn't play, banged up again, and then going against this Panthers defense, which is really not as good a matchup as people think for wide receivers? Too much risk for Ridley?
Yeah, with or without Lawrence, I'm not doing it with Ridley. I liked him last week because it was the Bucs. It took a while, but he came through. Don't like him this week against the Panthers, especially if T-Law's out. But even if T-Law plays, banged up shoulder, I'm not playing Ridley this week.
I agree. It's easy to, again, look at last week's box score and say, well, look, Ridley, what he did, how can you sit him? It's a different story. They have T-Law, doesn't play. There's no way you can play Ridley. Next up, the Rams taking on the Giants. Cooper Kupp, I don't think we can call him a must start this week, but he's still got to be at least a really strong option, right?
Yeah, you got to feel good about Cooper Kupp. It's the Giants. This is not a good defense or secondary at all. So I think if you got Cooper Kupp, you start Cooper Kupp.
It's been surprising, really, of all the things with Kupp is how inconsistent he's been. It's kind of like boom or bust with him, which is not what you would expect from a guy like that. Well, like you said, I'm not sitting Cooper Kupp unless I'm just absolutely loaded at receiver because it's the Giants here. And then as far as Puka Nacua, you got to feel the same. There's really not any reason to sit him.
Exactly. You got Puka Nacua, just start him.
But then we also have to look at number 3 guy, Demarcus Robinson, 4 straight games with a touchdown. And it's not just like, oh, a 2-yard touchdown here, a 5-yard touchdown here. He's getting at least 40 yards, and last week, 82 yards. Do we have to consider Demarcus Robinson?
Yeah, he's right there with me, like DJ Chark, Brandon Cooks, these guys that have upside, could come through for you in good matchups if you need them.
Yeah, you can't assume he'll score another touchdown, but it's definitely in play. I think more importantly, I would rather have a player on a great offense that is rolling like the Rams than take a shot on a guy on a lesser offense, like the Panthers or the Patriots. So I don't say you have to start Robinson, but he's a strong flex option. And then Darius Slayton was kind of one of our sneaky start specials of last week, and he came through. Is he another sneaky start this week?
Yeah, no, don't feel as good about him. That was the Eagles. This is the Rams. Rams defense has been pretty good. Not starting Darius Slayton this week.
Yeah, matchup does matter. I do feel a little better if Tyrod Taylor's the quarterback here, but not good enough that I want to start any Giants receiver in championship week. Cardinals taking on the Eagles in Philadelphia. Hollywood Brown missed last week. Not sure if he'll give it a go this week. If he does, can you play him?
Nah, way too risky here. I mean, how many times are we going to start this guy and just get crushed? Can't do it.
The only scenario would be if he practices in full by the end of the week and they say, yeah, he's good to go. Even then, there's risk. I might take it just because it's the Philly defense and they have no other receivers they seem to trust. But even then, yeah, you're taking a big chance. On the other side, Devontae Smith continues to produce. I don't know why people keep even asking about him. If you have Devontae Smith, don't you just start him?
Yeah, and especially this week at home against the Cardinals, I'm playing Devontae Smith.
The Saints going to take on the Bucks. Big game for both teams. Let's start Chris Olave. Always a solid option, but against Tampa Bay, looking like a great option.
Yeah, this is another guy. We get so many questions about him. I'm like, he's good every week. Why are we questioning this? Just start Chris Olave this week, please.
Yeah, you absolutely have to start Olave if you have him. Now, Rashid Shaheed is not that clear cut. Had a big game, but the downside is he could do nothing. So how do you feel about him?
Right there with like Brandon Cooks and these guys, he could hit that home run. It's a good matchup for him, but also he could strike out. But if you're looking for that home run play, he's got the potential this week.
Well, out of all those, flex possible candidates, he's going to be the one who I feel best about because it's the Tampa Bay defense. And like I said, I feel like this game might turn out to be a shootout between Derek Carr and Baker Mayfield. Yeah, I think that's what it has come to. So I can't say that I'm sure Shaheed will have a big game, but it's definitely in play. And then for Tampa, what about Chris Godwin?
Yeah, kind of disappointed a little bit last week. This is a tough matchup. I don't know if the ceiling is there this week. I'm going to say no.
Yeah, with Godwin, it could have been a big week because he went against the Jags. That pass defense gives up a ton of yardage. Now we got the opposite here. The Saints are a tough opponent for receivers. He's just going to be a floor option in PPR, and that's it. Niners taking on the Commanders this week. Let's start Deebo Samuel. It's hard to sit Deebo anyways because of his upside. Against the Commanders, any possible reason you can think of not to play him?
No, you got to start Deebo Samuel.
Does the same go for Brandon Ayuk?
Yeah, I think both these guys just have so much upside. You got to put them in your lineup and take whatever you get.
Agree. Don't even think about it. You got Niners against the Commanders, just start them. Now, it's not that easy with Terry McLaurin. It's so hard to predict not only what this offense is going to do, but now we don't know the quarterback situation. Sam Howell's gotten pulled twice in a row. Is McLaurin just off the table?
If I knew it was Jacoby Brissett the whole game, maybe I'd feel okay about him. But, against the 49ers, what is even the upside here? So risky. I might just pass.
Yeah, I just don't think it's worth it. You're hoping for probably garbage time production. I'm not counting on that. I'm just going to try to ignore this Commanders offense for the most part. I think that has to go for Curtis Samuel too.
Yeah, way too risky this week.
Steelers taking on the Seahawks in Seattle this week. George Pickens. Awesome to see him just go off on everybody's bench last week. Is it going to happen again? Are we going to get tricked here and just starting him?
Probably. People are probably going to start him now, and he's going to crush you. But he's right there with me for guys like Rashid Shaheed, Brandon Cooks, has upside with tons of risk, and it's not a terrible matchup. So if you're looking for that, go for it.
You got to wonder with Pickens because really it's just the fact they hadn't been throwing to him, not using him the right way. Is this going to change because of Mason Rudolph at quarterback? I don't know. You have to just think of it in the same way. Huge risk-reward flyer at your flex. So if you're feeling lucky, or maybe you just don't have anybody more dependable, go for it. And what about Deontay Johnson? He didn't seem to really benefit with Rudolph at quarterback.
No, and like, what is even the upside here? I mean, I know he'd been like scoring before that, but that's it. I need more upside this week. I'm not going to do it with Deontay Johnson.
Agreed. It's not really a great spot for these receivers, so Deontay Johnson just doesn't have enough appeal for me. What about DK Metcalf? Geno's back. DK is the number one here. The Steelers' defense isn't too scary.
Yeah, I think you should feel pretty good about DK Metcalf this week.
Yeah, agree. I think I'm going to call him a solid, maybe high upside wide receiver 3. And Tyler Lockett, for the first time in what seems like forever, had a pretty good game. Not a huge game, though. Is he somebody you feel good enough about?
Yeah, I mean, I think as long as Geno's playing, which he is, you should feel fairly good about Tyler Lockett.
I agree. I think he's playable. Again, this really depends on who else you got, though. And then what about JSN, the rookie?
I'm going to put him right there with those guys. He's got upside. He could hit a big touchdown, but he could also kill you. So if you're looking for that, he can work.
Agree. He's not going to be somebody I feel too comfortable with at this stage of the season, but still, he's not the worst choice. Chargers at the Broncos in Mile High this week. Been missing Keenan Allen. Hopefully he comes back in time to save everybody's day if you've been missing him and Herbert. If he plays, you're going to play him.
Yeah, I think so. At least Easton Stick looked good enough last week, I guess. I'm sure he can get Keenan Allen the ball, so I think if he plays, you play him.
Yeah, I hope he does play. Look, if Keenan Allen plays for the most part, I can't find a reason to sit him unless there's limitations or something. So let's just hope he comes back. Now, if he doesn't, it's going to be Josh Palmer in that number 1 role. Would you feel comfortable with him in your lineup?
I mean, you can't feel super comfortable with him. More like a floor play at best.
Yeah, and this particular matchup doesn't excite me because if he is the number 1 guy, he's going to be opposed by Patrick Surtain. This Broncos defense has gotten better, so I don't think there's enough upside for me here. And you'd like to say you can just start Cortland Sutton, but he left early in Week 16 with a concussion, so you know he's going to go through the protocol. If Sutton clears in time to play, do you play him?
Yeah, against the Chargers at home, I think if Sutton clears, he's a good start this week.
Agree. This is a good spot for him, so let's hope he does play. And if he doesn't, is it time to consider Jerry Jeudy?
Never.
I think maybe. No, I can't do it. Week 17, no. Bengals at the Chiefs. Big game for those teams, too. Now, if Jamar Chase is back, I think you just have to roll with him, but what about T. Higgins? Because he put up some huge numbers the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, but if Jamar Chase is back, I mean, how good can we feel about T. Higgins with Jake Browning crashing back down to earth? Yeah, only if you need him this week.
I'll definitely feel a lot better about Higgins if Chase doesn't play. I think if Chase is out, I'm playing Higgins, no questions asked. If Chase does play, I think he still has enough upside to be a flex, but it's really going to be a tough choice. And as far as Tyler Boyd, I assume this only applies if Chase is out again. Is Boyd playable?
Even if Chase is out, this Chiefs secondary is legit. They are good. With or without Chase, I'm not playing Tyler Boyd.
Agree. I was barely even considering him the last couple of weeks. No to Boyd. For the Chiefs, we know Rashee Rice is the guy there. Sadly, the only receiver they can even trust. Still a solid start?
Yeah, I think he's still a solid start. He's getting the targets. They're at home. Every game is becoming like a must-win for the Chiefs. I think he's a solid start.
Yeah, although he didn't have a big game in Week 16, I think he can bounce back here. So still a pretty good wide receiver 3. Last game is going to be the Packers at the Vikings. So basically, we're going to run down the injury report here. Almost all of these guys either have or have had some sort of injury the last couple weeks to keep them out. So I guess let's just go yes, no for each one if they are in, because we have no idea what this is going to look like by the time Sunday rolls around. Christian Watson.
No. Coming back from a hamstring injury, too risky, not doing it.
Yeah, I doubt he plays again this year, and even if so, no way, too risky. Jaden Reed.
Yeah, I think he's a solid start.
Yes, Jaden Reed plays, I'm going to play him. Dontavian Wicks.
If you need him, you can start him.
Hey, he did score, and who knows what he would have done had he finished that game. He's been looking good. Not a must start, but a flex option. And then possibly the only man standing, if all three of those guys are out, again, is Romeo Doubs.
I mean, if he's the last man standing, then yeah, I think he's at least startable this week, but that's it.
Yeah, I would say if you've been waiting on Reed or Watson, or you're just hurting at receiver, I think Doubs is a good pickup, a good pivot, but this really depends on who else plays. And the Vikings also banged up here. Jordan Addison left early with an ankle injury. They're calling it week to week, so you can't feel great, but what if he suits up in week 17?
Yeah, you can't feel good. I mean, Justin Jefferson back and healthy, dealing with an ankle injury. I'm not risking Jordan Addison this week.
Agree. Even though the Packers' defense has been horrible, I don't get a good feeling about Addison specifically, so I wouldn't risk it. Now, you might want to risk KJ Osborne because he seemed to benefit. Remember, not just Addison who left, but also TJ Hawkinson left with an injury. Does that mean that KJ Osborne has to be on your radar?
He's got to be on my radar. He's right there with those guys. He's got the upside, but he's got the risk. It's a good matchup at home against his Packers secondary, so if you're looking for that, go for it.
I'm not going to go out of my way to start him if I already have good receivers in play, but if you're forced to pivot, Osborne seems like a strong choice. All right, now that we've covered all the receivers you need to know about, don't forget, we also got you covered everywhere else. Check out our Week 17 playlist for start-sit advice at every position, waiver wire advice, panic videos, and so much more.